Hey there, acupuncture enthusiasts. Needle selection is critical to having an advanced and elevated practice. Hi everyone, my name is Maya Suzuki, and today we're going to be going into why needle selection, and more importantly, the tip of the needle, is so important in having an elevated practice and, of course, advanced results with your clients. Now, if you're really interested in improving your acupuncture practice and bridging the gap between TCM and traditional Japanese medicine, then you're going to want to set up an interview for ShinKyu University. It's a lifetime mentorship program that adapts to where your practice is today, tomorrow, and in 5 years. And it's all about trying to give you the foundation that will help you build a strong traditional Japanese medicine practice in Moxibustion, acupuncture, shonishin, and much more. There's a link to that interview in the description box below. Now, if you're coming back to this channel, thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. But if you're new, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified of future videos coming out about traditional Japanese acupuncture and Moxibustion. Before we dive into why acupuncture needles are so important in your practice, I want to tell you a little story about how I discovered that acupuncture needles were so important for my practice. When I was a student in Toyo ShinKyu Senmon Gakko in Tokyo, Japan, I had a class all where we just sat down with a little microscope and we were given several different brands of needles. Needles that were made in China, Germany, Japan, the whole gamut, and even handmade needles. And then with these little teeny jewelry microscopes, we looked at the tips of the needles. And what I found, and what of course my classmates found, really surprised me. I'm going to go into this more in a little bit, but what I found was that really well-made needles often came from Japan. I'm saying that not because I'm a snob about Japanese acupuncture, even though I am a bit of a snob, more so because every single needle that I saw that was made outside of Japan was just made very poorly. I'll go into what poorly made means in just a second, but that's really why I came to this conclusion and why I continue to only use high quality needles in my acupuncture practice. All right, so let's get straight into it. The very first thing that you need to know is that quality matters. I kind of hinted at this in my story about when I first found this out, but the quality of every single needle, how it's connected to the shaft and also the tip, really does improve not only the safety of that tool, of course, but also the comfort of that tool in relation to what the patient is feeling. And it can also really change what the practitioner is feeling through the needle. Not a lot of people talk about feeling the ki and really channeling the ki through the needle, but in traditional Japanese medicine styles, it's a pretty common conversational topic. So when we use a tool, if it's not made well, what ends up happening is that our energy does not directly transfer through the needle. So for example, if there's a bend in the needle, it won't directly transfer and it makes things just not as exact. Going into the characteristics of each needles really brings up the most important thing, and that is how the tip is made, of course, and how the shaft of the needle is connected to the handle. The second part is a little bit easier to talk about. So when the shaft of the needle is not very well connected to the handle, obviously we run the risk of having the needle break inside of our patient. That has never happened to me. I've never actually seen that happen, but it does scare the bejesus out of me that it could even happen. And so I'm always really careful when I purchase a needle that it has really good dexterity to the needle shaft and also to the handle, but it also has flexibility, right? We want to make sure that our needles can move so that way we can adequately use technique, unless you're doing a very traditional classical needle technique that uses a large gauge, and then it's a little bit different. So now the tips of the needles is really important. Going back, tips of the needles are a little bit more difficult to explain, so we're going to use a little bit of visual reference here. There are 3 different types of needle tips. There is surioroshi, tomagogata, and yanagiba. Now, surioroshi and tomagogata are 2 very classical needle tip types. Surioroshi, if you can think about it, is the needle type that really is kind of more like a sword, right? So it has a sharp tip and then it has hard edges. And that is because it was used more for things like bloodletting. So we wanted to have a sharp tip to allow easy insertion and then really stop the insertion from happening. Tomagogata is a little bit different. It's round on a tip and then it has a nice round edge coming to the shaft. This type of needle was traditionally used for really deep insertion. We wanted the entire tool to go into the body. And so for a lot of the longer tools, originally they used this needle type. Why did they do that? Is because, yes, it was a little bit more painful to insert, but after insertion was complete, it was really easy to insert all the way down through the shaft. This third type, yanagiba, is a little bit different than the other two. It's kind of a combination, if you can see, between the other two types. We have a nice sharp point, which allows the tool to easily be inserted in the skin, and then a nice soft edge to allow deeper insertion down the shaft. Where you get in trouble with these three tip types is that more often than not, any modern tip of a needle is going to use the yanagiba or a version of yanagiba. And that's true of seiren needles and really most needles in the world. What's really, really difficult though is when the tip, the actual pointy part, is not made well. Sometimes you have tips that have a little bit of a curve to them, and sometimes you have a tip to that looks a little bit more like the sorting hat from Harry Potter, and sometimes they have little jagged edges. Sometimes they're just not straight, like it's the shaft itself just bent. I would say now that's a little bit more rare to have the shaft bent because of modern packaging, but it used to be a problem. So you can definitely see that if we have a tip that has a jagged edge or a weird point to it, or it's curved, that's going to be a little bit harder to insert into the body, and it's probably not going to be as comfortable for our client. Notice I'm using the word comfortable rather than the word of pain, because we always want to use positive language when talking about our acupuncture, and I think that's true of even when we talk to each other. So you want to talk about being comfortable and safe and friendly and inviting, and maybe stay away from words like pain and hurt and ow and sharp and things like that. Sometimes it's hard to explain a needle tip without saying sharp though. You can see that when you're using needles that aren't made very well, that don't have a good quality to them initially, it can really distract from your already amazing practice. I've already hinted that the impact of this, of course, is not only that you're not going to get as high of client results, but it's not going to give the same type of comfort level to the client. And in the end, pain and sensitivity to pain is never something that we want our clients to be fearful of when coming in to see us. So always make sure that you purchase a tool, even if it is a little bit more expensive, that is well made. I am not sponsored by seiren by any means, but I personally in my practice always use seiren needles unless I'm trying to have a very, very high level result for a very sensitive client, maybe someone who's very, very deficient, and then I might use a handmade silver needle. I tend to prefer ones that are made through Acupuncture. How to choose the right needle, of course, is where we get down to. I know in the comments I'm going to hear this, but that's really important. Before I tell you how to do that, I would love to know what kind of needles that you currently use in your practice. Go ahead and put that in the comments below. All right, so how do we choose the best needle for your practice? Well, you can stick to makers that consistently have high quality products. That's pretty much what I do in my practice, which is again why I tend to use seiren or Aoki made needles. There are some new needles being made out of Germany and also out of Japan, and there's some really cool products that are being made without plastic and all of these other things. I really applaud these products, but for me, I tend to stick with what works, even if it is a little bit more expensive, simply because I really want to put my patient's outcome first and everything else after that. The last thing I'd love to dive into is how to properly care for your needles. Of course, this is a more important topic if we're talking about tashing tools, something that we do reuse because we're not inserting them. But even for insertive needles that are one-time use only, always make sure that you're following the manufacturer's instructions, keeping them in a dry place. Always make sure that you have a needle tray, something nice and sterile to use your needles from, and that if you have a damaged tip or a bent shaft, don't use the product. There are ways to fix tips and fix the shaft, and I teach those in ShinKyu, but I think for most people out there, it's just better to get a higher quality tool that's not going to come along with those quality control issues. If you're ready to dive deep into not only the best tools to use, but of course, the amazing techniques that you can use along with those tools, you're going to want to set up an interview with ShinKyu University. There's a link to that interview in the description box below. And really all the interview is about a half hour to an hour of us talking, usually me or someone on my team, talking with you about your goals and dreams for your practice and where you would like to take them, and if the ShinKyu University mentorship is the best place to achieve them. Again, a link for that interview is in the description box below. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Do hit the bell for notifications on more videos all about traditional Japanese medicine. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to watch this video right over here to continue your mock Sebastian practice.